Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some PathOfExile 1 discussion. Today, I wanted to talk about Vaal Lightning Strike, and specifically why this skill is so dominant over other melee skills in the Settlers of Kelgar expansion. The way I'm going to demonstrate this, though, is by running some reasonably difficult content, specifically an Uber Cortex run, whilst we are running Smite of Divine Judgement as an alternative melee skill instead. Smite of Divine Judgement is what I would term a solidly mediocre skill. There is nothing objectively terrible about this skill, it's just not extraordinary. As far as the rest of the character goes, this is a Mageblood plus about 200 Divines Trickster that you're going to see in the background here. We are running reasonably good, but not Merit tier or anything remotely like it items in the other slots. We're the Mageblood, of course. Ephemeral Edged, haven't even bothered to get the Resolute Technique version, much less a Enchanted Resolute Technique version. Aegis Aurora, which is just utterly and totally busted in this build. We're using Mageblood defenses in conjunction with the bottom of the tree setup to get both Versatile Combatant and also Iron Reflexes. And in fact, you're seeing this before I pick up these last 2 points that will cap our spell block as well. So we're definitely not in a position of being perfectly set up or anything remotely like it. I haven't yet set up a Melding of the Flesh yet. So the only defenses that I've got against Elemental are 75, 75, and 90 resistances, and being Chaos Inoculation, I am 100% immune to Chaos damage. Anyways, that's the basics of the character, except for one thing I'm doing that's a little bit weird. Now, most people would not be playing this build this way, and ultimately, I'm doing this for style, not for power. I'm using Call of the Void, partly because I like this item, but also because I want to use Herald of Ice. I love Herald of Ice explosions. And as a result, I'm willing to make some slight compromises in power in order to fit them into my build. That is the reason that I have not got Discipline turned on. That's the reason I've got 10,760 Energy Shield, rather than the slightly higher amount that I would have, 11,865, which scales damage on this build as well, if I was to use the Discipline setup instead of Herald of Ice. But sacrificing power in order to have more fun is a perfectly reasonable decision in my mind. All of that out of the way, let's demonstrate what happens when we run the Cortex. Now, in the Uber Cortex encounter that you see here, this is going to be a long slog. I'm going to get it done deathless. It's going to be ugly. There's going to be a pretty bad mistake in it that would have killed me, except that the dice were on my side. And I succeeded in either spell blocking or attack blocking something that would have been an outright one-shot skill. Whatever the case, it's not the best play I've ever done in that fight or anything remotely like it, but it's good enough. The thing you're going to notice, though, is that this fight just goes on and on and on. And on and on and on and on and on and on. And this one's a lot quicker than the Uber Cirrus I was doing. So, what are the key reasons for this? Well, fundamentally, it's that I'm not using Vaal Lightning Strike. I was determined to make Smite of Divine Judgement work instead. And I'm not ragging off at Smite of Divine Judgement. I think it is solidly a B tier skill at the moment, which means it is good enough to play, it's good enough to beat Uber bosses with, but it is not something that is going to tear up the meta, and it's something that you can easily improve your build by replacing Smite of Divine Judgement with an A tier skill like Frostblades, or an S tier skill like Vaal Lightning Strike. Firstly, Smite of Divine Judgement does not have the projectile tag. This is not just a trivial matter. The projectile tag is something that provides a number of ways that you can multiply your damage that are not available to builds that are trying to use lightning, AoE, attack, melee, and strike tag skills. Specifically, the projectile tag allows you to get full benefit out of Sniper's Mark. Sniper's Mark is absurdly powerful. It causes the marked monster to take additional damage, and on top of that, it also gives you additional damage projection to hit the rest of the screen better. Sniper's Mark is one of the factors that causes a Vaal Lightning Strike build to pull quite some way ahead, and it's basically worth an entire extra support gem. And that's before you factor in that Vaal Lightning Strike already has better damage than Smite of Divine Judgement. So, that's our starting point, Sniper's Mark. The second factor is Nimis. Nimis is only an option on projectile skills, and while Nimis has some definite drawbacks, causing your attacks to target randomly, which can be quite bad at times, broadly speaking, these are very manageable. Nimis effectively doubles your damage if you can deal with its drawbacks, and the sorts of builds that we're playing here can definitely deal with the drawbacks. You can see in the background how tanky I am, and I am making sacrifices for style. If you don't make sacrifices for style, if you make more of an effort on defense, then you can make your character even tankier again and have less of those problems. So, the third thing though, as well as Nimis, is that if you're using Lightning Strike, you also get Vaal Lightning Strike. Now, there is a good Vaal skill attached to Smite of Divine Judgement, Vaal Smite. I don't have it on this particular gem. I'm leveling a new gem to 2020 to try and get a Vaal Smite of Divine Judgement that's at least level 20, ideally it'd be level 21, but I'll settle for a level 21. That gives you the normal version of Vaal Smite, which you can use alongside also having access to Smite of Divine Judgement at the same gem level. This is really good, but it's nothing compared to the damage multiplier that is Vaal Lightning Strike. Vaal Lightning Strike is something that you can sit down on a monster and it will just keep making lightning strikes at that monster for a short period of time. This is really, really good. It also hits other monsters as well. It's not even just one target, but it means that this is effectively at least one, maybe two additional support gems of damage while it's active. But the final thing that really seals the deal was the addition of Tinctures in 3.25. But Tinctures provide a huge, huge, huge source of additional damage to your character. Now, what's important there is that this additional damage that you get on your character is something that you can then line up. You can time it to occur at the same time as your Vaal Lightning Strikes go off. Let's do a really simple model of this in order to illustrate this point. So, imagine that Vaal Lightning Strike doubles your damage, and it's got a 30% uptime. So, Vaal Lightning Strike is like 30% more damage on your character. Then your Tincture is also doubling your damage and also has a 30% uptime. This is also a 30% more multiplier to the damage your character deals. So how much is this overall? You might be thinking, well, that's a 69% more multiplier when you combine the two of them together. That's kind of nice. But in fact, you actually get more than that. You're going to get 90% because you're going to line the two of them up. And then that means that 30% of the time you have quadruple damage, which is going to end up as a 90% more multiplier in total. Now, this is only assuming 30% uptime. You can actually do quite a bit better than this. And it also assumes that it's exactly doubling your damage. Maybe Vaal Lightning Strike is doing more than double damage, especially given that it's something that can continue attacking a boss when you're forced to dodge some particular mechanic. And so while Vaal Lightning Strike was already giving you a tremendous little burst window, your Tinctures amplify that even more. Vaal Lightning Strike has multiple different bonuses that all stack with each other and all collide to make it miles better than other melee skills like solidly B tier Smite of Divine Judgement. What the real problem here is not that Vaal Lightning Strike has such synergy with a Tincture, although that is still a factor. It's the fact that Vaal Lightning Strike and Nimis and Sniper's Mark end up providing so much additional damage that in the time in the background that you can see that it took me to defeat the boss of the Uber Cortex, I could have probably done 3 more entire Uber Cortexes. And a number of the Uber bosses that are not really approachable at this level of gear would be completely within reach as well. For instance, Uber Duber Elder is something that I don't think that this character is currently capable of beating. It would need a couple more upgrades to do it. But if I were to swap my character setup over to Vaal Lightning Strike, then I just have so much more damage that I would indeed be able to slay that fight as well. What do I think is the solution here? Ultimately, I think it is Sniper's Mark that is the real problem here. It's a thing that is just providing so much free damage alongside being a source of damage projection you would want to use anyway. I feel like all of the melee skills that don't have a unique synergy with Sniper's Mark could probably get 10% more damage, or maybe 10% better attack speed, or something along those sorts of lines. And at the same time, Sniper's Mark could have its numbers reduced a little bit so that it's not quite such a crazy damage amplifier while it's also providing other useful effects. And then Vaal Lightning Strike, particularly its numbers might be a little bit too high as well. Ultimately, the situation I want to see is one where when you've got a character built that's set up for melee, you're not thinking the single best thing I can do in order to make this character better is to change it to a Vaal Lightning Strike character. That's the way at the moment. If I wanted to make this character better, I would just remove this gem, I would socket in Vaal Lightning Strike, and I would immediately be much stronger than I am now. That, I think, is a fair bit of a problem, especially given that it's true for all of the melee skills. Smite of Divine Judgment's not something that I'm calling out because it's particularly terrible. It's very solidly a bit above the middle. It's better than Infernal Blow when I tested that out. Infernal Blow felt terrible. It's slightly worse than Frostblades, but it's better than a lot of the other ones. But all in all, it's a bit of a problem that we've got this meta at the moment where the best thing to do is to change your skill gem over to Lightning Strike. I'm going to leave it there. May your Vaal Orbs have interesting results. And for the rest of this video, I'm going to leave the Uber Cortex fight running, but I'm going to speed it up to 350% of baseline speed.